Did you notice during the pandemic that there was a massive wealth transfer? Did you know that America minted a new billionaire every day? Are you suspicious about this latest banking crisis and whether or not taxpayers will ultimately end up footing the bill? Is there something systemically wrong with our financial systems? Hello there, you 6 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage towards truth and freedom. If you're not a subscriber to our channel, subscribe right now. Turn on that notification bell. It's the only way you can guarantee getting this information daily, because the algorithm will direct you into the arms of the mainstream. Have you noticed how we're lurching from one crisis, from war, pandemic, now into another financial crisis, and that these crises present opportunities to elite systems? Let me know if you agree in the chat and the comments. I spoke to Gary Stevenson, the man I call the Del Boy of the Dow Jones, a Cockney commentator on financial matters, who told me that what you intuitively understand is actually what's happening, that these systems do generate the possibility for wealth transfer and do exploit crisis. It's a fantastic conversation. Stay all the way to the end, because you're going to be even smarter by the end of it. You're going to learn a whole lot more about things that they make deliberately obscure and opaque to prevent you from understanding them. Can you tell us, please, what's been going on with all this hullabaloo? Is it like the last one, the 2008 one? Is it will taxpayers end up inadvertently round the block, round the back, paying for it in some sort of way? And also, how do they keep doing these things? What are they doing? I know it's something to do with interest rates went up by 4.5% and they'd bought these bonds and it all went wrong. Like, so just give us stuff so that we can understand it and then resent it and attack it.
All right, so I'll start with your first question. Is this going to be like 2008? Markets are still concerned that this could spread. It's unlikely, but possible. Most likely it will be kept to this one bank, Silicon Valley Bank. There's worries about Credit Suisse today, which is a much, much bigger bank. Probably it won't happen. We have to hope it won't happen, because if it does happen, it'll be a disaster for everyone. Let's assume it stays just within this one bank, Silicon Valley Bank. If that happens, the banking system will survive and ordinary people will not be massively affected. And the reason for that is it's only one bank going under. And the loss, which sits with Silicon Valley Bank, will be spread throughout the whole of society, and everyone will pay a few dollars. I think the way that it has been communicated has been pretty misleading. We've been told it's not a bailout, and essentially nobody will pay. If there's a loss, somebody has to pay it. In this case, they don't just disappear. In this case, basically, anyone who has a bank account will pay a little bit more over the next few years, and that will be how it will be socialized. I think the most interesting thing is the point that you make, basically, about, in many ways, this is a repeat of 2008, in the sense that the banking system itself, and in this case, Silicon Valley Bank, most of the deposit holders are venture capitalists, big businesses, wealthy people. They are going to be protected, and the loss will be socialized. For me, what I think is most interesting is the way that this reminds me of, actually, the mismanagement of the COVID economic crisis, and the way that our society mismanages economic crises in general. Which is, as soon as the crisis hits, wealthy people can contact the government and they can protect themselves, and ordinary people are not protected. Go for it.
Nice one, mate. Thanks for respecting the sign. I like what you said about the COVID pandemic and the mismanagement of the financial aspects of that.
Now.
Oh, yeah, I am talking. Sorry about that, mate. But I wanted to point out that we are still on YouTube and we are bound by their guidelines. In a minute, we'll click over onto being Rumble, where we can just speak freely and say whatever the hell we like. So just wanted to alert you to the fact that we have to nimbly, like linguistic Nijinsky's, trap our way through the guidelines that are set by the WHO that YouTube and their parent company Alphabet adhere to. So you're saying, mate, that this is yet another example of creating financial conditions that are beneficial to elites, or at least are not punitive to the elites, while punishing ordinary people, even if not directly. So when Joe Biden goes, our taxpayers won't pay this, what does he mean really, mate?
It's an example of a management of a crisis in such a way that the rich are protected. And the communication given to ordinary people is that nobody will pay the cost. And I think the best example of this is at the beginning of COVID. Do you know how much money the US government has given out since the start of COVID? How much money they're giving out in total? It's $8 trillion. That is $24,000 for every man, woman, child, and baby in the US. So if there's a family out there, family of 5, mum, dad, 3 kids, if they don't have an extra $24,000 each, someone else has got it. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were going to give out $8 trillion, I would think I should do an analysis of who's going to end up with that money. But was that analysis done?
I'm guessing that's one of your rhetorical questions. I'm seeing your style now. You're using rhetorical questions. You're a skinhead using rhetorical questions.
No analysis was done. No analysis was done of who ends up with that money.
They've done some analysis, Gary. It's standard procedure.
Well, you won't be surprised to know I've done some analysis where I'm from. We pride ourselves on understanding things fully. Listen, the reason that money was needed is because the spending of the rich collapsed, all right? If you're an ordinary person, what are your expenditures? Rent, mortgage, food, bills. During COVID, you're still paying them. If you're a very wealthy person, luxury holidays, going to the theatre, going to bars, you probably know about that kind of stuff, Russell.
I'm self-made.
Those expenditures couldn't be made, which meant the spending of the rich collapsed. It was replaced by the spending of the government, which means the government pays your wages, you pay your bills, you pay your mortgage, it goes to a rich person, and he can't spend it. $8 trillion funneled through ordinary people to the rich. Now, what do you think will happen? That's $24,000 per person. So that goes to the rich. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, same in the UK, to all of the richest people in the country. What do you think will happen if in a period where the economy is closed, we give hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds to all of the richest people in the country? When you reopen, you'll have inflation and a cost of living crisis. It was obvious. And if you don't believe me, go look at my YouTube. In June 2020, I predicted massive increase in inequality, massive increase in inflation and a cost of living crisis, because that is what happens when you massively increase inequality. And people need to understand that when crises happen, we need to start looking at them through the lens of inequality. Who wins and who loses?
I like it. My favourite bit was the bit where Gary goes, and if you don't believe me, right, you can ask my mum, because she's seen me do that analysis, blood. That was my favourite bit. Mate, what about Julian Assange's thing, that the function of government is to take money from public hands and to pass it into the private sector, whether that's through military action, exploitation of crisis, or even in economic situations like this one, look for opportunities?
I think if you look at the last 3 years, that is definitely what they have done. There's a question of why they did it, whether they knew they were going to do it. So I worked in finance for a long time, and I studied economics. I went to London School of Economics, I went to Oxford. From my observation of wealthy people who understand economics, I suspect they probably did it by accident. Because I think what it is a mixture of greed and stupidity. What they want is to protect their interests. As long as they're protected, that's all they care about. So they go in. I think this SVB example is great. It's a great example because straight away, these guys on the phone to the government, bail us out, get your bailout. Nobody talks about who wins, who loses. You know, I think at the beginning of COVID, we had such an amazing example of that. We are so privileged to have witnessed such an example of mass elite stupidity, right? £700 billion, $8 trillion given out. Nobody in the mainstream media said who ends up with that money. It's a simple question, right? And that money is in the bank accounts of rich people now. And now we have a cost of living crisis for ordinary people, but ordinary people can't afford, in many cases, to feed their kids at the same time as the biggest and fastest ever increase in millionaire and billionaire wealth. The average US billionaire doubled their wealth in the first 1 year of COVID. The average UK billionaire increased their wealth by £630 million in 1 year. And yet here we are now, where ordinary people in many cases can't heat their homes, can't feed their kids, and we're talking about it like there's no money. What ordinary people need to start thinking, when there's a crisis, when your cost of living falls, please, God, look at the rich and say, is it falling for them as well? If your life is getting worse and their life is getting better, probably what's happening is inequality is increasing. If you look at the statistics, that is what's happened here.
It's a brilliant lens to provide, mate, because it does seem like the very definition of a wealth transfer, an energy crisis that leads to profitability for energy companies, even though they receive them subsidies, a financial crisis that appears to somehow or another benefit financial elites, wars that benefit the military-industrial complex, medical crisis that benefit the pharmaceutical industry. Before you know it, crisis becomes the state that most benefits the elite, so crisis for ordinary people becomes de rigueur. Well, that was a fantastic conversation with Gary. What was your favourite bit? What did you learn? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Remember, turn on the notification bell and subscribe right now. Remember, my stand-up special is available right now over on Rumble for a one-off fee or as part of the yearly deal. See you over on Rumble. Till then, stay free.